What's everybody? How's it hanging? How's it happen? You guys know this is Kevin from the Chord Progression Podcast. The podcast, Rolling Stone magazine says, initiates profound discussions with rock and metal artists, allowing fans to discover the creative workflow of their favorite musicians and understand the factors that make the band succeed or fall from fame. We are also sponsored by Dark Fusion Systems, the best for your custom computing needs. Get $100 off your entire ability code CVPod at darkfusionsystems.com. Link strip from the podcast below. Go to our feature presentation, the third time I've ever had someone on the podcast 5 times. She was on 4 times before with the band GFM. Now she's out on her own, and it is Magdalene Rose. She is here on the podcast with us once again, talk about everything that has happened since GFM all went their separate ways professionally. We also talk about how she has faced fears and uncomfortability, which has led her to where she is today, along with how she embodies that in her music, along with the song Teeth Eater, what to expect on her upcoming debut album when it's ready to drop, and why the music is made to connect so many of us, to let us all know that whatever we go through, we're not alone, and we are so much more than those struggling moments in our lives. I absolutely love this episode, so let's do it. Let's go! Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, listeners of the Chord Progression Podcast. To this day, I've only had 2 people ever show up on the podcast 5 times. And today, that 2 becomes 3. Since the last time we spoke with this artist, she has gone out on her own, and she seems to be relentlessly touring every step of the way. I have not seen a day where I don't think this woman has stopped touring. Her life has seemed absolutely nuts, and she's continuing that beauty core sound that we all know and love. And yes, I still have my GFM sweatshirt on because of this. With the brand new single Teeth Eater out now, and with another tour coming up supporting Disciple and Seventh Day Slumber, you're not going to want to miss out on her. So please welcome back Magdalene Rose to the podcast. So Maggie, welcome back.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be back.
I'm excited to have you back, and it's just crazy to think it's like the 5th time I've had you on. It's like 1, 2, you're the 3rd person ever do. So I'm like, I've been doing this almost like 5.5, 6 years now. This is just wild, and it's like I finally get to do this again. I'm like, this is great. Woohoo!
Another milestone, yeah.
Another insane milestone. So I just want to get everyone caught up to speed with you who has been flying around. So since the last time we talked to you, of course, it was you and your sisters with GFM. Now you're out on your own. So can you give me like the full-on rundown of what has happened since you were last on here? Because I know it's a heck of a lot, and I'm always curious to hear what has all gone down.
Yeah, so the last time I was on the podcast, I was still in GFM, and that was a band with me and my 2 sisters. We did, we called it Beautycore, and it was kind of our own style of metal and pop and punk and like all this kind of like mesh of genres mixed together. And we put a hold on it in 2022. We felt like we were all being called in different directions, and we felt like GFM was not where we were supposed to be at that moment. And so, we all kind of went our separate ways, like business wise. And I still felt like I was called to do music. And so I called Joseph Rojas, who is the lead singer of Seventh Day Slumber, because he's been doing it for a long time, like 20 plus years in the industry. He has his own record label, and I had no idea how to do anything on my own. And, I did a lot of like the behind the scenes stuff for like GFM, but it was always with a group. And I had never wanted to be a solo artist ever. And, like, it's terrified me. And so I called him and I was like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. Like, I want to do music still, but I don't know what that would look like. Like, I don't know how to get my own band. And so they flew me back up to Nashville because I had been visiting, because I was dating Blaze at the time, his son, who was the drummer for Seventh Day Slumber. And they just kind of brought me on tour to see if I even wanted to do the solo artist thing. And they're like, you can just try it out. We're going to go on tour for 2 weeks in January. This was 2023. And they're like, if you feel weird and uncomfortable and hate it because it's not what you're used to, like, we don't have to ever do this again. Like, this is all like what you feel comfortable doing. And Blaze was my drummer. They're guitar player who just recently left the band was Weston. He was my guitar player as well. And we had a guy named Eli Gallagher who was playing bass for me. And it was like the weirdest thing ever. It was very uncomfortable for me, but I also knew I needed to be there. And so I was willing to push past the like uneasiness of not being on stage with my sisters. And we released my very first song, Shark Spray, in March of 2023, and flew to LA to do this crazy music video where I was underwater and like having to sing underwater in this giant water tank and stuff. And I think after releasing that song, I finally felt like, okay, maybe I can do this solo artist thing. And we were still playing a lot of GFM songs because we only had one song out. But as the year went on, we started to release more singles. And in November, we released our very first EP, and it has 5 songs on it. And it's a very similar sound, but it's kind of just has a more mature edge to it. We tackle a lot of heavy topics with the songs. And, I'm able to dive into kind of my own personal story, which is always hard to do when you have a band, because you have to make sure you're covering everybody's stories and topics that everybody wants to talk about. But with my solo project, it kind of is all on me of like what we're going to talk about and stuff. And so that's kind of scary, but it also is a little bit freeing because you're like, oh, I want to talk about this, so I'll talk about it. That's pretty cool. Like, and so we've been touring pretty much all year 2023. I did a lot of touring with Seventh Day Slumber. I did a tour with Chris Jericho's band Fozzy. And then in 2024, we like started working on new music. We just released a single called Tea Theater and on September 6th, I think.
Yeah, it was the 6th.
But did a lot of touring, did the festival circuit. And yeah, that's where we're at now. We have a full album written. It's just in the process of getting mixed and mastered still, and we're kind of waiting to see what the label wants to do, because Rockfest Records ended up signing me, and so they distribute through Capitol. So there's a lot of like big people that we have to like confirm things still with. But being on that label gives me a lot of creative freedom, because my father-in-law is the like manager of everything. And I got married in April in 2024. So we were on tour, stopped and got engaged in September of 2023, went back on tour, stopped and got married in April 2024, went back on tour, stopped for like 2 weeks so we could go on our honeymoon, and then went back on tour. So it's very much like stop and go since 2023. Like, and I think we've only been home for a total of like a month, and like it's all sporadically in 2024. So we have not been home for like very much at all. But yeah, it's been a wild ride, and we are just getting started. I had a song on Sirius XM Octane, and Spencer Chamberlain from Under Oath featured on one of my songs, and like just all of these childhood dreams that I didn't know were gonna ever happen were happening. And it was just in the most chaotic and like hard season of my life, and all these good things started happening, but it was hard to enjoy them because I was still very sad because it wasn't what I originally thought. My life was planned out to be. Like GFM was everything, and so I had to learn how to be me and how to be Magdalene Rose. And yeah, still kind of, I feel like I'm always probably going to be trying to figure that out, but we're at a pretty good space right now. We're like in a good spot.
Well, as time goes on, everyone's going to have to be figuring that out about themselves, no matter what aspect they are in life or whatever place they are in life. Like even myself, it's when I first talked to you back in 2019, I was in a completely different place than I am now in 2024. I've had to constantly look and figure myself out, and it's always a journey every step of the way. But the biggest key around all of that, from when you and your sisters went your separate ways professionally, I want to make sure that's added in there, because that's a big part of it. Professionally, separate ways. As sisters, though, that's still tight. That's still tight. But
yeah, and it's awesome because we can support each other in our projects now, which is weird because it was always like you're kind of supporting it, but you're part of the same thing. So it's
Mhm.
like you're not supporting somebody individually in their project because they're working on the same thing as you. And so it's like a weird, like jumbled up thing. But now it's like, oh, my sister CJ, she started her own band, and so I can support her band in doing that, and I can get excited for her.
Mhm.
And my little sister Lou, she's streaming on Twitch a lot and trying to make that kind of like her steady job, which is awesome to see it kind of just continue to build. And so I can support her for that, and like it's genuine because it's not, oh well, I like this and I'm supporting you because I like that it's my job too. It's like, no, I'm happy because this is something you're doing that's making you happy, and I'm happy for you, and I'm happy that you're like succeeding, which is a new sensation for all of us.
But it's a good sensation too, because at the same time, all three of you are able to further explore and expand who you are as people and what your calling is in life, while still being able to support each other in their goals, in their dreams, and in their passions and their projects as well. Even earlier today, the day we're recording this, I was all set up for this, and I'm like, okay, I got to see what CJ is doing, because I know CJ was still in music, and I'm like, okay, I got to reach out to her, and I want to bring her back on too, so I can make her the fourth member of the Five Timers Club.
Yeah.
Like I was all in on it too. But the thing that stands out the most is, for me, especially from that whole entire story, was the fact that as everything was changing around you, as you were still trying to figure out what you wanted to do, and when it came to going out as a solo artist, and you not sure if you want to do it, but you kept pushing past that, point of uncomfortability, and didn't let that restrict you from seeing if this was actually what you wanted to do or continue doing. Because there's a lot of times in life where, especially as humans, we find that point of resistance, we find that point of uncomfortability, and we revert back to what is comfortable. And it kind of puts us in this certain box of what we can do in life, because we're not able to go past those bounds of what keeps us restricted in our own minds. But by you being able to do that, not only were you able to go out, be signed to Rockfest Records, be able to, create an EP, write a whole album, and have a lot of potential to really distribute this stuff, because, when your father-in-law is the manager of the whole label, it kind of helps out, but that's just the way it is. However, keeping going on that, look at all the great things that have happened, getting Spencer Chamberlain to feature on one of your songs, continue to tour every step of the way, not stop going after these dreams, and continue to grow not only as a person, but as a musician and as a songwriter as well, being that soul writer, having to put your own experiences out there all the time, putting yourself in a vulnerable spot. It has opened up so much opportunity for you, and is continuing to do so because you wouldn't let that uncomfortability stand in your way.
Yeah. And it's definitely like a scary thing. Like I could say it like, oh yeah, I did let him out. Like in the moment, I was so like, it was terrible. But I knew that this was where I needed to be. And so, yeah, it's like kind of, that's where courage comes in. And it's the whole like cliche thing where it's like, oh, well, people who have courage are like scared the whole time. But it's true, when you are able to stare something that you are afraid of in the face and say, I'm going to do this anyway, even though I'm literally like crumbling in fear right now, but I'm going to do it anyway. That is the truest form of courage. And I had to do a lot of stretching, like in myself, and my personality and my just entire being was stretched to its limits. But it really has helped me understand who I am at my core, and it's helped make me a stronger person. And just kind of like as I'm growing, I'm thankfully growing in like good ways, and I'm like having to, yes, battle it, but I have a good group of people around me to support me as well. And they're not just gonna like be yes people to me. They're gonna like tell me, hey, maybe let's approach this in a different way, because what you're doing isn't going to be great for you mentally, or it might come across in a way that you're not meaning to. So let's double back, or like kind of do a double take on some of these ideas here and like rework them, so you're not only putting your best foot forward, but you're also like protecting yourself, protecting your like mental health, protecting the people that you love. And that's kind of helped me a ton too, just kind of be able to step outside of myself and see it from an outside perspective. And just kind of, I think that's helped me a ton, just learning how to have better relationships, and not just business relationships, but I can actually be friends with these people too, type thing.
That makes a lot of sense. I recently had a conversation with Peter he played in Extol for quite a while, and we were talking about this. We were talking about the meaning of life, and his meaning of life is really put in one word: fellowship. Because when you have that connection with people that you're able to not only relate to but speak, deeply with, or they have them challenge you to really step outside of yourself to just observe: am I doing what I should be doing? Am I doing something I shouldn't be doing? Is it leading me down a bad path and I'm not realizing it? Instead of being in your own little echo chamber and having people always saying yes. And again, because then that limits you to where you could potentially go. It limits you in growth, but it also still allows you to regress even further into bad habits, bad relationships. It maybe even helps you regress into something even worse. But by having people that are there to not only support you and want to see you continue to succeed, but challenge you in ways that are going to make you think and process, is this the right thing to do? Or am I going about this the right way? Or is there a better way to go about this? Can we try this idea? And by them being there to not only be that, voice of reason or that voice of, exploration, but having the support if you're going to go forward and try that stuff, that gives you the comfortability to get past that fear, to get past that anxiety that this might not work and that uncomfortability. And it just speaks like being able to continue to grow. As musicians, as artists, or as anybody in humanity, when you have people around you that are able to help you just reflect on yourself from an outside perspective, but also push you and support you in ways for you to do better, it helps you grow because it helps, make that uncomfortability something you're not going to regress into. It gives you the confidence to face fear in the face and say, you know what? Yeah, I'm scared. Yeah, I'm crumbling on the inside of this stuff. I'm frightened as ever, but I'm still going to do it because if I fail, I fail. It's going to stink. But at the same time, I still have that support system that's going to help pick me back up so I can try again.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and if you don't have that, then I hope everybody has that. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, it's really hard if you don't have that.
Yeah, I haven't had that at times. I've had that a lot of times. And it's just when you have people that support you completely, it really works out. And I mean, I'm glad to hear that, especially as your career has gone on, especially as a solo artist, you're continuing to see a lot of that support funnel through, not only continually from your family, but also from the professional side. When you said, you can learn how to, not only have professional relationships with these people, but be friends with them and, essentially have them as a family, literally now. It's a lot of challenging, to deal with those dynamics, but dealing with those dynamics is a beautiful thing because then you can create some of those best connections you ever had.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah. And going even further into your music as well, you said that there was a new album that was already being worked on. So I already want to ask and dive deep into that. Well, not dive too deep because I don't want to give too much away, but how was the process of making that, especially a first full-length album out on your own?
It was a very kind of like a roller coaster of not just emotions, but just challenges. And some songs came super easy and it's like, oh, I just started humming this melody for a chorus and I just wrote the words in like 10 seconds and like we were already halfway done with the song. And then the song Teeth Eater that we just released in September literally had 15 different versions and we were still changing it as we were sending it to get mixed and mastered, and like we were still moving parts around. And that song took so long because it was like the third song we started writing and we were writing that in like early 2023 and we just released it and like we're still messing with it. And so I think that's part of the reason that we wanted to put it out finally, because we're like, let's just release it, that way we will stop messing with it because the song is so frustrating and I don't like this song anymore. Like, and now that it's out, it's like, okay, I don't have to worry about the stress, so I'm falling back in love with the song. But for a while that song was so frustrating and like we all hated it because it's like it was just so annoying that we couldn't find the way that it needed to sit. And so we finally found it. So that stuff like that where it's challenging is always frustrating, but there's also like the emotional side of it where I wanted to dive into different things that I was struggling with or people like my best friends were struggling with, and I felt like I wanted to give them a voice. And so that those are always hard to write too because you want to make sure the songs are like worded perfectly and you want to do them justice. And when it's things that I struggle with personally, I want them to be written in a way where if somebody else is struggling with the same thing that they can relate to it and it doesn't come across as like disingenuine or kind of like an unachievable thing. Like I want them to know that they're not alone in the struggle, and if I can do it, they can for sure do it. And so that's always difficult, and like sometimes it's scary to put yourself out there like that because of how vulnerable you have to be. And it's like, oh, I don't know if I want people to know that I struggle with this. That's a little scary. And so it's kind of like had its ups and downs. And I haven't worked on an album since like 2016. GFM had just been putting out EPs for a while. And so once we got kind of to the halfway point, I was like, we still have another half of an album to go. Like, what do you mean we're not done yet? And so that was like a kind of a like shell shock for me at first. I'm like, we still have so many songs to work on. We're not even close to being done. But then I was able to be excited because it's like, oh, well, that means we just get to write even more, and we get to experiment even more, because since this is the very first album, it's a very new project. There's not really any rules, so we can literally just write whatever we want to write. And so that kind of having that mindset helps me be like, okay, this isn't a chore. This is a journey we're on together, and it is fun, and it's gonna be great. And you just gotta go into the writing room and have fun. And we had a lot of like just kind of bonding with this writing. Me, Blaze, and Weston wrote a majority of it, and then the guy who was playing bass for us, Eli, he also jumped in on a few songs, and Blaze's dad even jumped in on some of the songs. So it was very much just like everybody was willing to help where it was needed. And we would stay up super late working on things. We had this giant like fish tank sized jar full of candy, and it was our goal to eat all of that by the time the album was done, and we hit that goal for sure. Like I think we had to refill it halfway through, and like it was bad the amount of candy we consumed, but like that was what was keeping us from going insane. And it was definitely a process, but it was kind of like immersing ourselves in musician boot camp, because we had like a little mother-in-law suite that was like built into a home studio type thing. So we would just go like pull ourselves away, and half the time like we'd be writing, I'd fall asleep, I'd wake back up, keep writing, somebody else would fall asleep, they'd wake back up, keep writing. And so it was a very extensive like project, but I'm very excited for people to hear it, because it's not just the same rock album or a metalcore album or something like that. There's so much that goes into it. T Theater has a saxophone solo on it, and there's just stuff that we had never tried to do with my voice that we were able to kind of explore and experiment with. And it definitely is just a new updated sound of like my voice and rock music, and bringing pop into it. And I'm very excited for people to hear all of the songs. And they've already heard 5 of them from the EP, but there's just a lot of stuff that we're doing that's going to make it into this big cohesive story that's very exciting. And like we're already working on artwork that kind of ties into it, and it's just really cool just to see it all finally coming together and like getting closer to being ready to release and stuff. And just all the ideas we have are so cool, and I can't wait for them to finally like be out into the public.
There is so much to dive into at what you just said, but my first main question is, when the album comes out, is it going to be sponsored by Skittles and Hi-Chew after all of the candy that was consumed?
I wish, but also at the same time, I feel like my stomach would hurt so bad if it was.
It's like we just kept so many bags of Skittles, so many bags of Hi-Chew. What are we supposed to do with them? It's like every show you're going to, go and play, you're just going to have rolling out a big giant fish tank of these things. It's like, well, they supplied us with these, so everybody, free Skittles, free Hi-Chew. It'll be like the cupcakes all over again.
Yeah, I'm just throwing candy at everyone. Please just take this. I don't want any more candy.
Hey, do you know how happy that would make people in the middle of the crowd, though? They would go nuts for it. It'd be like a birthday party piñata, except the candy just keeps coming because you're throwing it out like crazy with all that.
We'd have to get like one of those potato launchers and just fill it with the candy, and then like just shoot the candy everywhere.
See, that's as weird of an idea as that is. That's not a weird idea, but that's an awesome idea. Especially you could have like your own like branded potato shooters and just start firing them off at people. Just candy explosion everywhere. Oh man, Halloween. You know, you got nothing on Magdalene Rose here.
Yeah. Well, it helps because my birthday is on Halloween, so I'm kind of just the embodiment of trick-or-treating then at that point.
Oh, you are absolutely right on that. That could be like a whole little tagline, the embodiment
of trick-or-treat.
But I mean, it's just the amount of time that you put into this album as well, the amount of effort you to put in there. Beyond that, especially the ideas that you had for this, and we were talking about, you know, putting your own experience in there, really opening up, being vulnerable on that. It is tough. It isn't the easiest thing to do. And when you have a goal of, I want to write from my own experiences, but also wanting to write from your friends' experience and really putting themselves into the album as well, because it also puts fans in the album as well, and doing so in the most respectful manner of, I want to put your story in there. I want to talk about what you went through, but I don't want to put you like down for it or anything. I want to make sure that it's something that when people listen to it, they can dive into the experience. And if they've had that experience, they can reflect on it and know that they are not alone on it. And if they have, it's something that's not the best experience and they have surpassed it or have defeated it in a way, they can use it as a way to look back and say, look at how far I've come and build up on that confidence going forward. In a world today where there is so much negativity, especially look on social media, everybody's always playing the comparison game and no one ever really wants to put their faults out there because it's such a highlight reel of everybody's lives. When people know that, you know, hey, life ain't perfect. What you went through, there's a lot of the people that may have gone through that, and especially through art, whether it's visual art, music, anything. When people are able to see what someone has gone through and connect with it on an emotional level, it shows more comfortability. It shows more acceptance that it is okay to have those negative experiences, surpass them, and overcome them. And we all become better for it. And then we can continue to support others going through that as well and make the world a better place overall than what social media would have you think.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the biggest thing that I try to put in my music. It's just that, like you were saying, it's okay to have these things happen and these things that you're struggling with, and that's okay that you struggle. And I also have struggled with this, but you don't have to stay stuck in there. That struggle doesn't define who you are, and you're able to heal from it. And don't let people underestimate you, and don't underestimate yourself because you are so much stronger than you even know. Like a lot of times I know I do. It's, you think that, oh, this is such a big thing, like I will never be able to break out of this. But no, you're underestimating yourself. And just look how far you've come from a year ago or even a week ago. You've already built up so much strength from that. And if you just continue to fight and continue to push forward, you will overcome one day. And that's why I always keep my messenger open and my Instagram DMs open and anything. That way people can message me and we can walk alongside each other through life. And community is so important to have. And it's just important that people have resources and people they can talk to and know that they're not weird or crazy and they're just going through a rough patch and it will get better. And some people, it takes a lot longer to get better, but they don't have to be defined by what their struggle is or by what their sickness is. And that doesn't have to be their identity. They can just be a person living with this sickness, a person living with this struggle, but at their core they are still a person. They're not their issue. And that's what I try to promote, not just with my music but my platform, is that we're still people at our center. And we don't need to let anything that is negative define that. And that doesn't have to be who you are anymore.
Yeah, it's the negative aspects and the struggles of your life aren't what defines who you are. It's something where going through those, and when you get past those, as you're working past those, it reveals the strength that you have inside of you and the confidence that you can build up inside of you, so that when you do surpass that, you can fully embrace yourself for who you are. That is something that, a lot of people, like you said, they struggle with that, but it might take, a day, it might be a week, it might be a very long time. There's some people that struggle with this stuff for years. But when you have that support and you know that there are people that have gone through this and there are people that are willing to support you, whether it's just, your close friends and family, people you meet in a support group, or if it's just through art where you can connect with an artist that is talking about these things and is connecting with you in an emotional way for you to understand that you're not alone in this, it helps build up a little bit of confidence, or helps build up that little bit of support for the strength for you to get to that point where you see how strong you really are. You can get past those negative things. You can get past those struggles, and they're not going to define who you are anymore. They're never going to define who you are. They're going to be those stepping stones for you to get to where you want to go in life. And continuing to be able to push that message out there and use your platform for the message and actively act on it with having your messenger open or having your Instagram DMs open to be there to talk to people who need that is something where you're practicing what you're preaching, basically. And it's a beautiful thing because there's not a lot of people in this world that are willing to do something like that.
Yeah. And I feel like, especially with these really big artists that people look up to, sometimes it's hard for them to have their messenger open. But also sometimes, unfortunately, they also don't want to, and they just want to be able to create music. And that's kind of the end of it. And for as long as I can, I want it to be a very open thing where I'm readily available for anybody who needs it. And, even if one day I get to the point where it's like I can't respond to all these messages, I want to be able to respond to as many as I can, and have, if I need to have people in line, like helping me run my account, that way we can respond to as many people as we can. That's why I do music, is to help people. And it's not just to make myself famous or to release really cool songs. It is to help people and to be that friend to somebody if they've never had that person before.
Absolutely. And as you continue to grow, you very well might get to that point too. Because I think about like people like, Ali Sykes or Noah Sebastian. It's, their messenger definitely isn't going to be open because of how many messages they would receive in a given hour, if that was. And plus, you never know what the messages are going to be like. You never know what people are going to send. But if you get to a point where it's like, okay, I just can't respond to any of these, or we're getting so many messages and it just can't handle them, or you're getting a lot of messages that aren't related to that, then you can have people help you out with your account and kind of like, okay, these are the ones that are definitely going to be needing that message or needing that connection. These are the people that you can reach out to. These are the people that are just like, oh, they're big fans. They just want to say hi. You can reach out to those. These are the messages that you really don't want to answer to because they are definitely on the weird side. and I mean, that happens. It's humanity. It's the internet. That's going to happen. I'm pretty sure that hasn't happened in the past already. But beyond that, continuing to be able to have a place where people can go and continue to get that support from your music and from you directly, it also just shows people more of that connection to what you're really doing. And they feel like, again, they're not alone. And it's a huge thing, especially when you're going through something that you're describing in any song that you're working on or any song that you're listening to, any song that you're singing. It helps. It helps more than anybody realizes, especially when you're in it.
Yeah, that's definitely just kind of the heart I always want to have behind it, for sure.
Yeah, because even on Teeth Eater, I mean, it does have that epic saxophone solo in there too in the bridge. But like just the idea behind the song, the message behind it, and how it's all created, it helps create that exact same thing that you're going for, where it shows that, you're not alone in these things. And it helps people, maybe if they do not feel like they have anybody there, they feel less alone because at least there is some type of art out there that they can listen to, that they can express themselves through, that they can better understand what they're going through, so that they have that ability and they have that confidence starting to build up that they can get past it.
Yeah. And especially with Teeth Eater, I think that was the scariest one for me to write that we've released so far, because it was a very personal issue that I had. And, there were a few videos where I had talked about having an eating disorder before, but I never really talked about it. It was just like, oh, I struggle with this. And then I moved on. But I felt like I was being pushed in a, like, not like nobody forced me to write this song, but I felt like I was being called to write a song about my time struggling with anorexia. And I was seeing a lot of people online on social media just kind of romanticizing it, or just kind of bringing back that really bad like Tumblr era where everybody was like, you have to be this skinny type person or you are like, you have no value. And I started to see it coming back on social media, and I was like, this is not something that needs to come back. This is terrible. And I wanted to be able to have something to put out on social media that kind of combated that and let people know, like, hey, real people struggle with these things. I'm a real person and I had anorexia, but I was able to overcome it. And if nobody has told you that you are beautiful, if you have not felt beautiful in a very long time, please let me tell you you're beautiful. Please let my song be a comfort to you, because you don't have to be stuck in that cycle anymore. It's possible to break out of it, and it's really hard, but you can do it. And I was able to do it, and you don't have to just continue to watch people online talk about being stuck in it and not doing anything about it. Like we have to do something about it, because it is a serious problem, and there's serious damage that comes from having an eating disorder, and there's serious repercussions, and you could end up killing yourself from it. And I want people to have a chance to live, and they deserve to be healthy. They deserve to live, and I want people to know that. And sometimes when you struggle with eating disorders, your brain, because you don't look a certain way, you kind of tell yourself that you don't deserve to live, you don't deserve to eat, you don't deserve anything good. And that can't be further from the truth. And I wanted to be able to put that message out there that like that can't be normal anymore. We can't be promoting this, and we need to be promoting that people are beautiful, they are loved, they're not alone, and your size doesn't tie to your value. A number on a scale doesn't equal your value. Your value lies in being a human, and you are you. There's only one of you. And I'm a Christian, and so I believe that God has created everybody in his image, and everybody is worthy and valuable because they are a creation. And that's awesome. Literally nothing else can create a human being like that. And if people aren't from that belief, I don't try to shove that down their throats, because it's not my place to just beat people over the head with a Bible. But I do want them to know that they have value, and that they have beauty and worth. And if that's something that even one person can kind of take away from my song, then I've done it the right way, because I've helped at least one person.
Yeah, that's actually one thing I've always admired about you specifically, because through your message, through your music, I know about shoot, now I'm babbling on about myself. I know you've have strong Christian faith, and I know you believe in God, and I know it's a huge thing for you. And I've always admired how you've taken that and you've expressed that, but you've never beaten it over the head on people, like, Bible thump, like bam, bam, bam. I've always admired how you've, spread your message and spread what you believe and spread everything through human connection, authentic human connection. That's the best way to describe it. And when you're looking at T Theater too, because you're opening up about your own past experience with it, and you're really being upfront with it as well, to show people, I went through this too, and it is something that, is not a good thing to go through. At the same time, if you are struggling through this, because I've seen it on TikTok too. And even though I'm not on TikTok, I see all people, like, just random clips show up. It's like, are we going around down this route again, where people are trying to be like, 90, 80 pounds and like super duper skinny? That's not healthy. That's not going to help anybody out. If you're constantly trying to achieve something that's just that, unhealthy, then your worth's you're going to put in your mind your worth own tied to it. And when I was looking through the song, because I looked and saw what the press release said, saw where the exact specifications are coming from, and I looked at it as like a different perspective, a song created to help others feel less alone when they're dealing with those issues, but it also takes on another message, meaning and trying to achieve perfection and struggling to do so for acceptance by others in this perfection that is deemed by others or society, only for you to really connect this song to you, that many have felt the same way. And the first step of breaking out of that want for perfection by other people is finding acceptance in yourself and growing from the inside out, and not trying to grow from the outside in.
Yeah. It really is a thing where you have to learn to love who you are, because, love from other people, love from your family, love from your friends, it can only do so much if you don't love yourself, and if you don't learn how to accept love, and if you think you are unworthy of love, no amount of kind things that people do to you or say to you are going to matter at that point. And you do have to learn that you are enough to be loved. You deserve love, you deserve kindness, you deserve to be healthy, you deserve to heal. And if you aren't at that point yet, that's where you have to start first. You have to start at the root of the source before you can fix anything else.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why, especially in the song too, I love the inclusion of the saxophone solo, because the way it was toned, the way it was played, it reminded me of the ending of like a 1980s John Hughes movie. But if you think about like a lot of those John Hughes movies, at the end of the movie, especially the teen ones, whoever was at the center of it, whoever character was at the center of it, and at the end of the movie, a lot of them were taking a look at themselves and finally being able to accept themselves for who they were, accept others for who they were as well. And when you bring that in there, especially for other people, it's accepting yourself for who you are and being able to then grow from the inwards out and be able to be healthy in that way, instead of trying to, be somebody that you're not, or trying to achieve acceptance from outside sources when what that outside source is going for is not healthy for you in any regard, or is trying to push you against what you actually are as a human or who you actually are as a person. And then having more of these pop sensibilities around there, especially the way the production hit and the way the vocals were, it matches on creating that connectability for an audience, because a lot of people can really pick up on those tropes, connect with the flow, connect with the overall vibe, connect with the way the production sounds. It just hits in their emotions. So the way that it was produced, and especially that saxophone solo to really bring out that feeling of inner acceptance of yourself, it absolutely hit every step of the way. The fact that it took 15 versions to get to this, I mean, I'm curious to hear what the other 14 sounded like, just because I'm just curious to hear where all the thought process went, not only from you, but everyone else working on this song to really bring this out the way it needed to be brought out.
Yeah, and it's funny because we went back and listened to the very first version of the song before, the night before the song released. And it sounds nothing like the song at all. It is like your very typical like metal song leading into like a little bit of the metalcore side. There wasn't any vocals on it or anything, but it was just like not the same at all. There's this weird breakdown in it that I don't think we would ever use. Like it's just so weird how different it is, because it makes sense the way it is now. And it's like, no, it can't ever be that. Like, why did we think it would be that? This is the way it's supposed to sound. But it's just funny to go back and listen to like the original versions of everything, because sometimes they're really, really close. And it's like, oh, we didn't have to change very much. But then sometimes it's like Tea Theater, where it's like, bro, that is not the same song at all. We did not use any of that ever. Like, it's not included at all in anything we did.
But that's the beauty of the music creation process. Either you're going to hit it closely or you're going to be really far away, but that's the beauty of it. You get to discover where the song is going to go, where it's going to hit, and what's going to actually sound correct for the idea that you're trying to put out there.
Yeah, it's always funny because like, yeah, that one was not it.
And now we just need to get some more people that are really connected with the song Tea Theater, get those nice Tea Theater tattoos that you're doing. I saw that literally right before I jumped on this. I'm like, she posted like an hour ago. No way. I can't believe she's tattooing people now.
Yeah, I'm still very new to it. I'm still apprenticing, so I have to like get everything approved still. And I just started working with color on like people's skin. I've worked with it on like fake skin and stuff. So I finally got promoted to being allowed to do like small color pieces. But yeah, we wanted to do something similar to Project Semicolon, where people get semicolon tattoos if they struggle with suicide, to remind them that their story is not over and that there's so much more to life now, that they've overcome it. And I was like, it would be super cool to do something like that, but for people who have struggled with eating disorders or body dysmorphia or some type of body image issue, because it can feel very isolating to have these struggles, because people are like weirded out by them. They don't want to talk about it, and it's a very like internal struggle. And the only way it physically manifests is when you start losing weight, or for people who struggle with eating disorders on the opposite end, when you start gaining weight. And when you have an eating disorder, a lot of times your body will start to eat itself because you're not getting the nutrients. And so your teeth are the first thing to go a lot of times. And so you're essentially becoming a teeth eater. And so I was like, well, wouldn't it be cool to kind of let people know, hey, I've struggled with this, I've overcome it, or I'm currently overcoming it. I'm currently working through recovery, and you're not alone. And if they would see a little tooth on somebody's leg or somebody's arm or somewhere on a person, it's like, I think they struggle with the same thing too. And hey, that's one less person that feels alone. Like I feel like I know them kind of because we struggle with a similar thing. And the more people that get it, the less lonely you feel, and the more a community builds where people are working toward recovery instead of isolating and being stuck in that cycle. And we're inviting people who have not even struggled with it to get it if they know somebody and they want to support them. My husband Blaze, he got one to help, not just with the song, but he knows I've struggled with it, and so he wants to let everybody know, like, hey, look at what my wife went through and she beat it, and like she overcame it. And so it's awesome to see the people that are just kind of being moved to join that and to get their own teeth eater tattoos. And it's been cool to be able to do them myself now that I do know at least the basics of tattooing. I can do some line work and shading on the little pieces and stuff. So it kind of makes it even more of like a community that I'm a part of, because it's like, oh, I'm doing these, and like we get to talk while I'm doing the tattoos, and it's just really cool to see more and more people get them. And I have a lot of people talking about wanting to get them, and it's just cool to see where it is now, but I know where it's going, and it's like, oh, this is going to be so awesome with like people walking around with teeth and like telling their stories, and they feel like they finally have a voice to share their story. And it's been really cool to see people be empowered that way.
Yeah, not only you're creating that connectivity through your music, but you're also able to create that connectivity even more as a tattoo artist as well. And I mean, if you're able to go and get your own teeth tattoo for Magdalene Rose at a show at one point in time, if you've struggled with this, or if you're like, you know what, I know someone that's struggling with this and I want to support this, what better way to connect with the music, connect with everybody else, and tell people that they are not alone than by getting your own official teeth eater tattoo from Magdalene Rose right here. Like, it's a beautiful thing. I'm absolutely floored by it. I love seeing it. And Maggie, I know you got to get going soon for another one of these, but I got one more question for you if you're ready for it.
Okay.
I've been asking every artist this for the past year, and I'm very curious to hear what your answer is going to be. So, Maggie, can you name me 3 bands or artists that you love that you would love to see more people get into right now?
Okay. So I feel like I kind of have to give my sister a shout out. Her band is called Morning Eve, but it's spelled like crying, like grieving, Morning Eve. And they're a very new band. It's kind of like hardcore type music meets a little bit of metalcore. So they still have, the metalcore melodies, but they definitely lean more into like the chunky guitars and guitar solo type stuff. So it's been cool to see not just the songs that they're releasing, but she's shown me some of like the lyrics and melodies of other songs that they're working on. So I'm very excited to see where they go. I also really like a band called Convictions, and they're more of the heavier, not quite deathcore, but like leaning on that. And like definitely leaning into like the gent and also just regular metalcore. They have some amazing choruses that I love. And then there's also a band that like they're definitely bigger, but they're not underground anymore, but they still are like opening for a lot of these really big bands. It's a band called Stain Atlantic, and I love them. They're more like punk rock, pop rock. And I found them when I was first starting to kind of work on Magdalene Rose by myself. And it is a girl lead singer. They're from Australia. And I was like, okay, this is like a super strong front woman. If I want to be anybody, I want to be her. Like, she comes across as such like a boss on stage and in her vocals and in music. And I was like, I feel like maybe I can do this too now. Like, if somebody else is doing this, like maybe it is okay for me to be like this super boss chick. Like I can find my voice again. And she really helped me kind of fall back in love with not just like heavy music, but just being who you are, being passionate about it, and being able to take the lead from stage. And so I really like and respect their band a lot. And they're definitely growing very rapidly. And so I wouldn't doubt if they start headlining stuff very, very soon. But I would definitely tell a lot of people check them out because they're really awesome.
Yeah, I would not doubt it either, especially with how they've been growing. And I'm glad you plug CJ's band as well, because when I bring your sister on, if she doesn't plug your band, I'm gonna be like, CJ, what's going on? Clearly you didn't get the memo, so I will have to cover for that. But
you gotta just throw her under the bus for that one.
I definitely will. Well, Maggie, once again, it has been a pleasure having you on the podcast. I'm going to close this out with three things. First things first, when it comes to Magdalene Rose, when it comes to the brand new song T-Theater, going out again with Seventh Day Slumber and Disciple in October 2024, and getting you ready for the new album, which is going to come out hopefully next year. Go script for the podcast says find Magdalene Rose online. Links, labels for everything's going to be down there. So be sure to follow her. Be sure not to miss out on it. And if you ever need to talk to someone, if you're struggling with something, her DMs are open. So she practices what she preaches. Trust me on that one. We ain't lying. Now it's time for number 2, Maggie. Whenever guests on the podcast always make a certain promise. You've been part of this promise. And next time you get to perform live, I will come and say hi once again. And I always do first rounds on me. I might have to just throw candy at you this time just for that.
There we go.
Just for the fun of it. Otherwise, always think of something. I might have to bring cupcakes and be like, I threw these out last time, so now I'm just going to actually present these fully.
Now we have to actually eat these, and these can't be destroyed this time.
Yeah, but we know we won't get the ones from Walmart that have the utmost obnoxious dye in them. I'm just going to get the good ones.
The good ones for sure.
And time for number 3, Maggie. Cannot end this by saying goodbye, as you are the 3rd member of the 5 Timers Club. And I know this ain't going to be the last time I have you on the podcast. So this is not goodbye. This is, I'll see you later.
See you later.
Well, folks, my interview with Magdalene Rose. Now it's time for Kevin's final thought. I first had Maggie and her 2 sisters when they were with GFM on the podcast. I believe it was like April or May of 2019. Maybe it was June. I can't remember, but it was like episode 20 something when I first was doing interviews over the phone. Like it was a wild time. They were also my 2nd ever video interview I ever did in 2019. Then they've been on the podcast 2 other times, and now this is Maggie's overall 5th time on the podcast. Seeing how much she has grown as a musician and as a person, and seeing how much more as a, from an artistic standpoint that she has matured when it comes to creating music that she is very confident in, being able to open up about her own struggles and really put it in there and create something where people, when they listen to her music, they have a feeling that they're not alone and that their struggles don't define them, and that they can get past that uncomfortability and grow from the inside out when they accept themselves and really learn exactly who they are as people, is honestly an incredible thing. I have always been a big fan of what the ladies in GFM have stood for. Magdalene Rose continues to do that, and I am wearing the GFM sweatshirt that I got. I think this was like after the 3rd time I ever interviewed him, I bought this. And this is like my go-to sweatshirt now. Whenever I go to music festivals, whenever I go somewhere that's like, hey, you need an extra sweatshirt, I always wear this one. I've worn this to shows before. And I mean, I wouldn't be doing that if I didn't support the band or support of what they're doing. And Magdalene Rose absolutely, through her music, through her message, through her integrity, and through her sound overall, absolutely deserves your support. So be sure to support her. Go to description of the podcast below. It says find Magdalene Rose online. Links, levels for everything are going to be down there. So be sure to go check it out. Be sure to follow along with us online. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, description of the podcast below. Also be sure to hit subscribe on YouTube, which is right down here. Hit the follow button if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Like the episode to push us further along and get more of these artists known. Maggie, it's a pleasure having you on the podcast. We'll do it again when the album's ready to come out. And for all of you wondering, I did mention CJ a couple of times. I said I reached out to her. I did. We're going to try to bring CJ on here now and get more of what GFM was on the podcast and see where all of these fantastic ladies are going. On that note, that's going to be That's going to be it for me, everybody. Thank you very much for listening to the Chord Progression Podcast. My name is Kevin. And you guys know everything was up to the big, healthy, and hearty. See ya! Yeah.